Broncos Television presents Broncos Beat with Alexis Perry.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for tuning in. I hope that you are all staying safe and healthy as we navigate these tough times together. So in hopes of bringing a little normalcy to your life, we have the normal crew here on this Brady Bunch-style Broncos Beat. You guys, thank you so much for joining us. First things first, we have Benjamin Allbright from Broncos Country Tonight on 94.1 FM. Ben, how you doing in the back cave?
I'm doing all right. I got the cape and cowl tied up back here. We'll change after we get off camera. Don't want to give everybody the secret identity away.
Yeah, sure. Of course, we have Cecil Lammey from 104.3 The Fan. What's new, Cece?
Everything's good up here on the mountains in Roxborough, so let's talk some Broncos.
Yeah, living that life. And of course, Matt Boyer from the Denver Broncos. Matt, how's baby Boyer doing?
Baby Boyer's good. He's quiet right now. Hopefully that holds for the remainder of the show, but you never know.
You know what? If not, no one cares. We'd be glad to hear from baby Boyer as well. But first things first, kind of the biggest news really since this second wave of free agency hit. Heck, maybe even throughout free agency as a whole, the Denver Broncos reached an agreement with Shelby Harris, who will be returning for one more year. Of course, that deal ended up being about $3.25 million for him for the next season. So is it safe to say that you guys were a little shocked that Shelby Harris will be returning?
I think sort of. When this process had started, we all felt like Shelby was going to leave and go kind of cash in somewhere else, and that wasn't going to happen here in Denver. Once the Colts had traded for Buckner, though, that really collapsed a lot of the defensive tackle market out there. Shelby was counting on that deal with Indianapolis, which they had talked about quite a bit. He'd already turned down Cincinnati, and so that really kind of didn't leave him a lot of options. And in the end, he pulled off the rare dual agent change over the course of the offseason, and he's back in Denver. Shelby's one of my favorite guys in the locker room, so I'm happy to have him back at what appears to be 25 cents on the dollar.
Yeah, and the Colts make the move. They get Sheldon Day as well. Then you see other defensive tackles, Javon Hargrave, Jerron Reed. We could go down the list, Eric Armstead. I mean, just you saw a market develop for certain players, and then other players like Shelby, it didn't develop as the way that they had hoped, the way that we had anticipated. So, yeah, I was shocked that he's back. Glad to have him back. And, again, kind of another one-year deal where he'll be able to do it again and then go out there and test the market one more time.
And to Cecil's point, I think this is going to be a great move for him to be able to prove it this year because he gets another year with Bill Kollar, who really, when you think about it, when he got here, the Kollar-Shelby Harris relationship really took Shelby's game to another level. Shelby talked about last year that he was almost out of football before he came to the Broncos. So I think this is another opportunity for him to kind of prove his worth. And every time you looked at this guy last year, he was on PFF's, most efficient interior defensive lineman. So I don't have much of a doubt that he's able to raise his game to another level this season.
Very true. Really quick before we move ahead to what we might see from the defensive line this year, I did want to talk about Shelby Harris's contract. Given the fact that we did think that he was going to be somewhere between that $9 and $12 million range, like you guys said, somehow or another things just didn't work out. Do you guys think that this global pandemic that we're all dealing with right now had anything to do with that? Because he mentioned that in an interview with Kliss for 9 News yesterday.
I don't know if it did or didn't. I know it did for Derek Wolfe because teams were concerned about the medicals and wanted to get him in, and ultimately he wound up with the Baltimore deal, which was the most favorable one he was offered. But I don't know that it affected Shelby as much. Maybe I can't really put a finger on that. I think Shelby's market just cratered when, like Cecil was talking about earlier, we had the Colts going out and get Buckner, Reader signed in Cincy, and then all of a sudden all these other guys. He's a very specific kind of hybrid 34 end under tackle got a guy, and there aren't just as many spots because he's not a true nose.
Okay.
I think it had to do with the pandemic, but also you got to remember the CBA. A lot of these teams were waiting to figure out, what that collective bargaining agreement was going to be, and that combined with this pandemic, I think, forced a lot of teams to, audible on the fly, maybe more so than they would in previous years.
Well, I'll say it didn't help. We all know Shelby. He's a charmer, right? He's great
right.
to talk to. And you get in a room with that guy, imagine if he would have been able to have those team meetings. Someone probably would have fell in love with the guy, with his personality, turn on the tape, love his game. So, how much it hurt, we don't know, but it certainly didn't help.
Shelby Harris, $3.25 million. You get Jarrell Casey for a 7th round pick. Is it safe to say that John Elway is kind of putting together the defensive line edition of the no-fly zone? Should we call it like the no-run zone or like the pressure cooker? I don't really know exactly what to call it, but it kind of feels that way with the deals that he's getting done.
Well, it kind of feels, let's go to a throwback when he put together this team with guys like Aqib Talib and DeMarcus Ware and Emmanuel Sanders. You know, Elway already with his moves, because you mentioned the very inexpensive deal for Shelby, a 7th rounder for a guy like Casey, which is amazing for his talent and his play. I said last week that John Elway was crushing it. I'll say this week that John Elway is a front runner for executive of the year with what he's been able to do specifically with this Broncos defensive line.
I like the sound of that. What do you think?
I like to call them the 4 horsemen of the Asacalypse with Chubb, Miller, Casey, and Shelby back. That's the nickname I'm rolling with. We'll see if that one sticks.
We've got plenty of time to workshop some names, right? I mean, we've got plenty of time in these next couple of weeks. I will say that, you know, Cecil mentioned it, you know, that 2014 free agent class we look back on and really think of fondly with Ware, Talib, TJ Ward. And I think this class does have some potential. It's funny because we came into this offseason thinking offensive weapons were going to be key for the Broncos in free agency. And John Elway has once again kind of zagged when everybody thought he was going to zig and has gone heavy on the defense. And in a division with Patrick Mahomes, you have to do that.
Right. And Matt and Ben, they both bring it up. Pat Mahomes and 4, right? Because Ben said 4. Well, you need to get pressure with 4 because the advanced data shows that if you send a 5th guy after Pat Mahomes, he's even better. He's already dangerous enough. So you must be able to get pressure without sending that extra man. The Broncos have set themselves up to do that with that power 4, fantastic 4 again. Matt, we got time to come up with something because this is great.
I love it. I think the one thing that I'm interested to see is based on the personnel they have, and now we know how much they want to incorporate Dre'Mont Jones this coming year, is how much they move from an odd front to an even front and run kind of a 4-2-5 as a base. I'm interested to see how much they do of that and who takes over the Will Parks role if they do run that package.
Well, the Baltimore Ravens, they fell in love with Derek Wolfe's tape. That is for darn sure. He is no longer a Bronco. So like you mentioned with Dre'Mont Jones, Shelby Harris, what do you guys see this defensive line looking like? Kind of slot the guys into the positions and the playing time we think these guys are going to see.
I think in the base 34 under front that Vic likes to run, you're going to see Purcell at the nose, you'll see Shelby, and you'll see Casey at the ends. And then I think when they go even front, when they go to that nickel kind of 4-2-5 look, you'll see Casey and probably Shelby inside, and then Vaughn and Chubb on the outside at the ends coming downhill. That would be my guess.
I want to see him when we get to see him in training camp or OTAs or whatever, but Dre'Mont Jones may force his way into this mix a little bit more than we're all anticipating. First, a Vic Fangio favorite. Second, an incredibly talented player. I'm not going to say, let's say, a Cortland Sutton type of jump in year 2, but I wouldn't count him out. So, you know, it comes down to where do you want Casey or Purcell at nose tackle for me in the base 3-4? And does that mean Dre'Mont Jones is on the side where Derek Wolfe used to be, Shelby manning his normal, you know, right defensive end position? Like, what are the Broncos going to do? They got a lot of options, that's for sure.
Cecil mentioned it. I think Dre'Mont Jones is kind of the wild card because it took him a little while to get acclimated to things at Ohio State, kind of processing the game, defensive formations, things of that nature. So I think with another year, a full year of professional football underneath his belt, I think that he can take a giant step forward if he studies up this offseason, and he's got plenty of time to.
Harris, Purcell, Casey, Jones. Do you guys think with those 4 guys that we're even going to feel the void of Derek Wolfe? Or do you think it's kind of like next man up, let's move on?
Like on the field, I don't think you're going to see it as much. I mean, Derek does work so well in a synergy with Vaughn in terms of tying up blockers and you know, and those guys play the pitch and catch game and get to the quarterback. But in terms of on the field, I think, you know, your next man up. But we didn't even mention DeMarcus Walker is going to be a contract year and looked fairly decent last year. You know, off the field, I think we're all going to miss Derek in the locker room. Derek was a guy who kept
I'm going
it real.
to, for sure. I know. He was actually one of the first guys that I talked to when I started with the Broncos, so I will miss him for sure. But you guys, coming up after the break, we're going to hear from President of Football Operations and General Manager John Elway on why he couldn't pass up bringing in a 2-time Pro Bowler.